spotted some work going on around where you live. It might be because His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, has approved an initiative to improve water drainage in the Emirate. It's called the Tasreef Project, and it's going to cost 30 billion dirhams, scheduled for completion by the end of 2033. We're talking flood prevention, sustainability, waving a magic wand over this emirate. Joining us now, Dr. Stephen Wilkinson, Associate Professor at the University of Wollongong, just nearby here in Dubai. He's also the head of the Smart and Sustainable Cities Research Cluster. He's got a PhD from Imperial College in London and is an expert in sustainability and environmental awareness with, as we're talking about today, extensive research and practical experience on flood management, contaminated land and urban resilience too. Dr. Stephen, how are you, sir?
Good. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. I think it's, and I've got to say, it's kind of selfish because there is a lot of work going on around where I live. And it looks to me, I'm no expert, it looks to me like it might be storm drain related. But I wanted to ask you this. Can you explain the significance of this project? 30 billion dirhams, so something the UAE government's obviously taking very, very seriously. To your best of your knowledge, how is it aiming to future-proof the city against floods in particular?
Well, it's a huge improvement on the current network. The older network within the business district city had 47 pumping stations, small stations. And in the last decade, there was this Dubai Deep Tunnel stormwater system, which was completed in 2001, and that drained Expo and Dubai South area.
Right, that end.
And it worked reasonably well during the recent storms. But this new project, this is looking at expanding the capacity of that and expanding the areas where it will be applied to. So it's looking at redeveloping the 47 pumping stations in the older side of the city to have a much larger capacity within that area.
Can I ask you, did you find it quite interesting to observe the recent floods with your kind of expert hat on? I'm sure your insights were very different to our kind of lived experience. Looking back, what were your big takeaways from those few days? Yeah,
it's different to the flooding that I've experienced elsewhere in the world, because you normally think of, there's a river and the river's going to burst its banks, but there is no river. The rain is coming down and the water's coming up through the ground because the land is so low lying. We've got groundwater just about where sea level is, slightly higher than sea level, so there's not much space underground for the water to seep into. So with all the rain that came down, we're getting this rise up from the ground. It's completely different to what I've seen elsewhere.
So yeah, intellectually very, very interesting. And then it's been obviously taken very seriously in terms of the government tuning into some of these conversations and experts such as yourself to think about, well, gosh, who knows what the future holds in terms of climate change. It was a once in 75-year storm, but that's not to say it couldn't happen again. So tell us a little bit about, what are some of the most pressing challenges to your mind that Dubai faces in terms of climate change and flooding, Doctor?
The climate change side, at the moment, we are seeing Hurricane Beryl, which was a Category 5 hurricane, which is rare anyway. And then we're seeing it, there's only occurred twice during July. And this is the earliest of those and the strongest of those storms. So around the world, we're starting to see much larger storms than would be expected. And the UAE in Dubai has a particular issue with climate change in that we get big storms, but we get them rarely. So when we're looking at planning, we can't say, well, this year and the next year we're starting to see this gradual increase in rainfall, because we don't see a gradual increase one year to the next.
So far more
we see sporadic, yeah.
And that must be very interesting from a developer point of view in terms of, what do we choose to invest in? What is worth our money in terms of seeing the benefit of that investment? Because it could be another 75 years. This building might not be around. And that's what I want to put to you next. Dr. Stephen Wilkinson is with us today from the University of Wollongong. I want to know if he could have a chat with all developers here in the UAE, what would be put in place with future flood prevention at the front of mind, but also us as individuals, anything we could be doing as well, community involvement. Joining us from the University of Wollongong, Dubai, is the Director of Research, Sustainability Expert, Dr. Stephen Wilkinson. We are talking about that Tasreef Project, 30 billion dirhams being invested to improve water drainage in the Emirate, talking about flood prevention. And I'm curious, and I'm not just asking this because my husband's a property developer, but when it comes to innovations or indeed ideals, the gold standard, what would you love to see developers here in the Emirates putting into place with climate change, but also flood prevention at top of mind?
Part of what I'd like to see is more of the integration between communities. So there are designs for individual communities, and then they need to connect to the larger network, which is put in place by the city. But the design varies from one community to another. It's very variable.
What about things like hardscaping, planting, things like that?
I think, we call it sustainable urban drainage systems, and that's just having that capacity within the local environment that can store water. Some of that would be like with a roundabout, try not to have the mound of earth and the statue on top, try and make it a little bit of a indent and have some storage underneath.
Oh,
even the central reservation between roads can be used to store water, and it's not really done. You see putting down the plastic layer almost at ground surface, with then the gravel being put on top of that. But if it were just a little bit deeper, then you could start storing water.
That's really interesting. Do you find yourself, when you're travelling, looking at the way that other cities and countries have strategies in place? Is there any one that you think is doing a fantastic job on that?
Different countries with different environments.
And different challenges.
It's different challenges. So in the UK, the approach of using farmland as storage. So you lose all the crops and you pay the farmer for those crops, but you then don't flood the city. And that's part of the decision-making process. In other countries, they've got the huge stormwater systems which are built beside roads or underneath roads. There's one that I've seen where it's a tunnel system, and they've got the roadway in it, so cars travel in two directions on it. And as the water level rises, one section of the tunnel floods, and then the second section of the tunnel floods, and you stop traffic with traffic lights. So the tunnel has a dual use. It's used as a road and then as a water drainage and storage system.
Gosh,
so there's
that's
a lot
amazing.
of innovations going on around the world.
So, and how do you then think about smart technologies, sustainable practices? What are you identifying, and ultimately, what are you teaching the next generation there at the university to bring on the next round of engineers and sustainability experts? What are you really excited about?
We've got a project at the moment which is using AI for flood planning. So we are trying to identify areas that flooding is more likely, and then look at the sorts of systems that we could put in at the small scale, and not the scale of this major project, which is looking at the city as a whole, but in a specific area, where could the water be temporarily stored so it doesn't go onto the infrastructure.
We spoke to a rocket scientist who was talking about how space can predict future flooding, which was really, really fascinating. I think we all saw some amazing aerial shots of Dubai, and certainly from space, back then as well. What about us as individuals? You're a family man, been in Dubai 5 years. What are some of the things that you do with sustainability front of mind, Doctor? And kind of, I guess, how we all play our part in the preservation of the planet, because it's very easy to go, I'm just one person, we're just one house. What would you like us all to be doing?
It's very, very difficult to be able to be sustainable all the time. And I think that the world is moving towards more sustainability, which makes it easier. But at the moment, we are very careful with the products that we buy. We are careful to try and use secondhand where we can, and try to make sure that what we do causes as little harm as possible. I often ask questions on sustainability forums, like for this aspect of my life, shopping for something, what's the best thing that I could be using, like sun cream here?
Oh, that's interesting.
Can I avoid the plastic bottles?
Can you?
There's these sticks that you can use that are wrapped in cardboard.
Really?
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting because that's looking at where the opportunities lie rather than thinking this is a problem, this is a barrier. And this is often, let's be honest, this is where money is going to be made in the future, whether it comes to climate migration or it comes to all sorts of different energy sources. It's not a case of all doom and gloom. It's where are the opportunities.
And in Dubai, I think that the movement is so rapid. One of the main issues is with energy systems, and with the opening up of the solar power plant, the nuclear power plant, the rate of decarbonisation of the energy grid is faster than most places across the world. So the change when it happens here will be rapid.
Yeah, it's agile, it's financed.
Yes.
What kind of conversations do you think we'll be having in 5-10 years' time when it comes to flood prevention as part of it, but I guess the climate change in this region in particular? Get your crystal ball out, Dr. Stephen.
Well, I think that here, as the energy grids start moving towards carbon neutral, then there's less worry about how much energy is being used. Right now, it's a big worry, and you want to try and minimise your energy consumption.
Just very quickly, I've had a message here from B saying, is it worth private residences having solar panels themselves? So if you buy a property, let's say you're in Arabian Ranches and you've got a standalone villa, is there any point in having solar panels at this stage?
Right now, it will help because the energy system is still quite carbon intensive, but the UAE has put a plan together to get to carbon neutrality. Once it is carbon neutral, then the only advantage that you have from the solar panel is that you are generating your own energy, so you don't have to pay for it separately.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Dr. Stephen Wilkinson, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time. Good to get an insider's take on this project. Tasreef Project is going to be scheduled to be completed by 2033, the cost of $30 billion. Dirhams, rather, looking at flood prevention and improved water drainage in the Emirate. But just to come back, we can all play our part as well in all aspects of sustainability and living responsibly for the planet.